Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. In this video, what I want to do is talk about how to do serverless functions not only in Netlify, but also in Vercel. Not only in JavaScript, but how you can do so in other languages as well. And both of these services really offer you some pretty convenient ways to do serverless functions. Now, if you're not familiar with what serverless functions are, it probably helps if you've done some backend work before, like you've created a web server using something like Express, Ruby on Rails, Koa, etc. So typically what would happen is that you would create like a backend server, like a web server that has different routes. And these different routes would get you data from a database, data from an API. You would create these different routes that do different things. But that means you have to write the server, you have to maintain the server, deploy the server, all these different things. But what if you only need like one route? Because you just need to make an API call and you just want to hide your API key. That's a lot of work to just have to write up a whole server, deploy it just for a single route. So what serverless functions allow you to do is allow to create one-off server routes, because what you're doing is you're really parking it on someone else's server. You're parking it in on Netlify servers, you're parking it on Vercel servers, and they're going to run it. And instead of having your server that's running 24/7 and you're paying for like, if you're paying like Amazon for like an EC2 instance, you're paying like per hour like a fraction of a penny to run your server, which may only get a few requests a month. The function, your serverless function, will only run when you actually make a request. So in that case, you're not running a persistent server, which is going to be a lot cheaper because you only pay per request. And oftentimes, like the first 1,000 or 10,000 requests are free each month. So in that case, you know, if you combine this with like static rendering, this becomes pretty affordable because you're really minimizing the amount of requests, and then you're also minimizing the hosting of a web server. So it's pretty cool. So bottom line is you can create some backend functionality into your apps on Netlify and Vercel without necessarily having to go create a whole Express server and deploy to Heroku. Is essentially like the bottom line. So let's see how we do this. So first we'll do it with JavaScript on Netlify because that's like the easiest, by far the easiest way to do it. So I'm going to do is create a new folder, and I'll call this JavaScript functions. Okay, so open up this folder, and what we're going to do is we need to create a few files. I'm just going to create two folders. I'm going to call it one folder, I'm going to call functions. You can really call it whatever you want. And I'm going to create another folder called public. That's where we're going to put our HTML. So in public, I'm going to create a new file, index.html. I'm going to go open it up over here, and let's just do normal HTML boilerplate. I'll just say h1. This is our functions Netlify project. Okay, cool. Then what I'm going to do is you need to create a netlify.toml. So new file, netlify.toml. If you're not familiar with what a netlify.toml does for you, and I think I'm creating it in the wrong place, so I really want to create it here. Netlify.toml. This is a configuration file for Netlify, and it actually does a lot more stuff than what we need to do in this video. So I'm going to kind of go through what this Netlify.toml does a little bit because I think it's underused by people who use Netlify. It has a lot of features, lets you set up a lot of things. So I'm just going to copy over. Well, actually, what I'll do is just so you see where this is. I do have a. If you head over to my blog, toots.alexmercedcoder.com, I do have a recent post where I create, I have these two blog posts here, like how to do cloud functions. And we're going to work through these. So I'm going to just open these up in two different tabs. Open link for Netlify cloud functions. And yeah. So let's go to the Netlify cloud functions one. So we already did the HTML file. And here's a TOML file. So what I made is like this little template of a TOML file here. There are other headings that a Netlify TOML file can have. And again, TOML stands for, I think it's like Tom's Obvious or Tom's Obvious Markup Language. It's just another markup language like YAML, yet another markup language for writing configuration files. So if you do a lot of DevOps stuff, like doing like Docker, writing deployments and stuff like that, you find yourself writing a lot of TOML and YAML configuration files. Now, so basically, if you use this boilerplate that I have in that blog post, see right here, I have a link to the documentation for TOML files for we're going to do more. But basically, what happens here, we have different chunks. Here's the build settings. This we're going to want to edit. Okay, uncommented out, I have the publish and functions properties. Those are the two we care about. Now, if you were using like React or something, then you would want to use this command here to say, hey, this is the build command to build your React or Vue or Angular app. Okay, publish, this is the folder that's going to be served. Like this is like where all your HTML should be. You're basically the folder that's served as your website. And then functions is the folder on where Netlify should check to see if there's any serverless functions. So we're just going to have a look inside the functions folder. Pretty straightforward. Okay, but it could be any folder really. Okay, so that's the build section. Now URL redirects. This section here is for like redirects, and I kind of have the boilerplate here. This is not really important for what we're doing right now, but if you use like React, Vue, or Angular, and you have like a router, and you want to make sure that like router doesn't break every time someone refreshes your website, this is actually what you need to put in your netlify.toml file to address that issue. So that's kind of already here in this boilerplate. So you can just uncomment that if you were going to use React or something. And then headers. This is if you want, really only work, doesn't really help us for our serverless functions. Our serverless functions will need to set their own headers on their responses, which I'll go over. But the idea here is that if you wanted to set the headers for the stuff that's served out of your public folder, like your main website, you would need to change that. So for example, if you wanted to put like a JSON file in here, so that way other websites could make a request to that JSON file, you'd want to turn this on, so that way other websites could make a request to your, these are what was referred to as the cores headers. You could add any headers you want. This is just saying, hey, when someone grabs something from your website, makes a request for it, what headers should be sent back. And you can actually do multiple entries for different websites. So this one's just saying, hey, for every page on your website, respond with these cores headers, which is like allow origins, what websites are allowed, methods, what methods are allowed, allow headers. Basically, this default setup is just saying, hey, anyone can make a request to any website of any type. That's, but you can customize it from there. So that's the netlify.toml. Really, the only thing that matters for us right now are these two folders. Actually, really, it's just this. Like, we're just doing the public folder so that we have like an HTML page to look at. But right there. Okay, cool. So we know that we can create our functions in this functions folder. So in this functions folder, we can just create JavaScript files. Oops, well, you can create a folder too. But if you create a folder, then you have to call your file index.js. So in this case, let's create a function called first. Okay, and this will be our first function. And in this file, what we want to do is create a index.js file. And then I'll just kind of copy the one from the tutorial. So that way, if you follow this tutorial, you've kind of seen how this worked out. And then this will be the function. And if you've ever done an AWS Lambda, essentially it's the same syntax as doing like, kind of the same syntax as doing an AWS Lambda on Amazon. The only thing that's different is that like on AWS Lambda, it doesn't automatically assume that you're making a request via like a URL. So a lot of these body parameters, or a lot of these parameters aren't there automatically. So what happens to Lambda just receives like an event and runs the function. And then you would connect your Lambda on Amazon Web Services to another part of Amazon called API Gateway. So you'd say an API Gateway is what creates the URL and decides like, hey, we're going to pass it these details like the body, the query strings, etc. Okay. So what happens is that you would connect the API Gateway to a Lambda, and then the API Gateway would pass all the normal like stuff you would see in like request and response in Express to these kind of properties here, and you can customize it and all that stuff. But that's a lot of setup. Okay, like I did like a really basic function, and it takes a second to set up, and there's a lot of permission stuff you have to deal with. This kind of assumes all that. It says, okay, we're gonna just do this as an API from the get-go. So this is not because the Lambdas on AWS can do a lot more. You can trigger them when you like upload files to an S3 bucket. You can trigger them in all sorts of different places. It's not just, hey, I hit this URL, I trigger this function. Um, so what Netlify is doing is they're just taking that AWS Lambda feature and simplifying it and saying, hey, Netlify functions, this is something that gets triggered when you hit a particular URL. You can do a little bit more. Read the Netlify documentation, but that's the basic idea. The idea is they assumed some things to make life easier, making this a much easier way to use AWS functions if you're just using them as like backend routes. But basically, this shows you the basic setup. So basically what you're doing is you're exporting this function. And the cool thing is that if you have like a package.json in the main part of your project, you can use node libraries here. So I could import like node fetch or Axios to use within here, or pretty much any other library, Mongoose, connects if you want to connect to databases, whatever you want. And you just do whatever you want in here. So what this is just doing is just destructuring the event object. The event object is where like all the information is being stored. Okay, cool. And basically here we have like the path, like what's the URL, the HTTP method, like it was a get, post, headers, like any headers that were in there, query string parameters, any queries that were in the URL, and the body of the request in case there's any data being sent through the body. So you have access to do whatever you need to do with these pieces of data. All I'm doing here, and then the idea is that this will return an object, and the object that this function returns gets serialized as JSON and becomes a response. So essentially, if we take a look here, we have status code 200 is part of the response headers, content type application JSON. Now, is in here you could add, if you wanted to like deal with the cores issue, here's where you would add the headers. So you would add like the same headers you see in the netlify.toml. So you would add these headers to that header section of the function if you want to like say, hey, other websites can make a request to this particular Netlify function. But yeah, you can return anything you want. The body, you would just say, hey, this is going to be the body, stringify whatever contents you want to pass in. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Like that's it. Okay, so now we got that. The next thing we need to do is just deploy it to Netlify. So I'm going to open up the terminal in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new repo on Bitbucket because I'm always using GitHub, so why not use Bitbucket? Okay, log in. Yep, log me in. Okay, yep, whatever. Let's create a new repository. Okay. We'll call this Netlify functions. That's all fine and good. Oh, select the project. Whatever. Doesn't really matter. Okay. Let me get the URL. Probably should sit down and just set up SSH for this one of these days. Okay. Then I'm here in the folder. So I'm in the JavaScript functions folder with all our stuff here. And I'm just going to do git init, create the git repo, git add dot, git commit -m, first commit. Then I will, I gotta make it the remote. Git remote add origin, and then git push origin main, because mine defaults to main, not master. Okay, it's gonna ask me for what's it asking me first? I think it's asking me for my password. I think is that. Nope. Try again. Yep, there we go. Cool. So that is pushed up. Let's just confirm that that's the case. Oh, gotta be on main. There we go. Okay, so we see the stuff there. So let me head over to Netlify. Log in. Oh, and a real cool thing I just learned like yesterday, I might as well show you while I'm here, is you can actually group tabs in Chrome. You think it's a simple thing you think I would have figured out by now, but nope. So let's say here's like this video. I can then now like add these to this group and see I can collapse it, which is really cool. That is killer. Okay, so Bitbucket. Yep. Okay, there we go, Netlify functions. And I just want to deploy the main branch. And there's no build command or anything. And plus, this stuff is already now in our netlify.toml. So if we specify this in our netlify.toml, we don't have to specify it here, because in netlify.toml we'll take precedence. Okay, cool. Production, cool. That's just building up. Let's just take a look at the deployment stuff. Verify, Netlify build. Good, it's building. Functions up. They're picked up on the function. Good. And yeah, that was successful. Okay. So let's go back here. Functions. And we want to see here's the function that we've created right there, just one. And then there's the URL. So we can make a request to this URL and it'll do the thing we needed to do. And see, right now I just had it send back like all the data from the event. So now, like, see here, query string parameters has nothing in it because there was no query at the end of the URL. But if I were to add a query at the end of the URL, so question mark cheese equals Gouda, and we'll go back down here and see there's cheese equals Gouda. So it's all there, and you can see the headers and all that fun stuff. Okay, so it works. It works. And that's neat. Okay, so that's how you do it with JavaScript on Netlify. Now let's talk about Vercel, because Vercel, this is pretty much incrementally we have to do the same thing. So we can start off with the same HTTP page. Here, the nice thing about this is that it's more like exactly like using Express if you're using JavaScript. You can use other languages. I haven't really tried out the other languages on Vercel yet. But here, instead, what I'm going to do is you have to create an API folder. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to use the same repo just to save us time. API. And API is going to have a new file, which we'll just call first.js. Okay. And here we go, res.json. So it's literally like an Express handler. Okay, that's literally what it is. So you're gonna have all access to all the things that rec and res would normally have if you've ever used Express. And I'm assuming that if you've done any kind of backend work in JavaScript before, you've probably used Express. So then you would just do a response, res.json, like you would do an Express. And that's pretty much it. You just create the function and it just picks up on it, as long as it's in that API folder. Only difference, we do need to set a config file here as well. Okay. Wait, did I need to do anything with my? Oh, I think that's it. Cool. Now what I will do is I'm going to copy that. Well, we'll just deploy it. But yeah, that was it. Let me just push this up. Git add dot to add that one file. So again, the only real difference is you make a folder called API and you put your JavaScript files in there. Git commit -m. And what am I thinking? Vercel. And then I'm going to do a git push origin main and password. Good. Let's head over to Vercel and deploy this. Okay, so we'll say new project. And I want to add a Bitbucket account. And we're using Netlify functions. That's fine, just use my personal account. Please select the directory within Git repository that contains your project source code. Wait, I think that's right. Let me see the other folders, but okay. Root directory, that's fine. The root directory is that. Framework preset, build output and settings. Since we didn't use a Vercel.json, we should probably play with this. So /public should be, nope, no build command. /public would be the folder. No environmental variables. Okay, it's cloning it. Build open, done with the static build. Okay, open dashboard. Okay, what I do want to do is deployments. The analytics settings, serverless functions. Okay, I guess we just have to kind of go to the project. But now if I type in, well, yeah, there's nothing there. /API/first. Let's see if that worked. No, didn't like it. Let me see here. Make sure I deploy the right thing. Deployments, settings. Oh, it's deploying master, that's why. So settings, build command. Oh, it's gonna let me use some other branch somewhere. Nutlify functions, Git, here we go. Here we go, production branch, yes, main. Okay. So in that case, we need to go back to the deployments and deploy again because it deployed branch that master that time. So what I want to do is redeploy. Oh, it's still using main. I don't want to use master. Where am I able to create like a new deployment? Overview. Domains and the creation. So here. Build step. Okay. So why would it still keep deploying from master? Oh, I need to push the main branch to update my production settings. That's what it says there. So we will do that. So again, recap API first. What I'm going to do is I'll just change this to say this is this is my response. Okay, we'll save that. Then I will do a git add dot git commit dash m change and a git push origin main. Then put in the password. That gets pushed. And that should update. There we go. Good. Now it's deploying to main. Good. And let's watch the deployment. Good. This time, seeing it do some more stuff. Done with static build. Aha. There it goes. It built the serverless function. So let me see if it picks up on that. See, now we see the functions tab. Good. So now, let's go back to visit the website. Refresh. Okay, well, it's just, I don't think I ever did put an HTML file in the front. Netlify API / first. And see, that works. As long as you put it in that API folder, there you go, you have use of the functions. And it's just like writing an express function. And similarly, you can make use of node libraries as long as you have a package.json in your file. So pretty straightforward. Now, the cool thing about Vercel, so if I go read the documentation, okay, you can actually do functions in a lot of different languages. Okay, it just depends on, like, let's see here, where does it get into that? But you're able to like write them in like Python, Ruby, Go. Just depends on how you write the function, and it just picks up on it. It's all in the docs. Okay, but that was the other one thing I want to show you. So now you know how to do it in Vercel, and you know how to do it in Netlify. Just always make sure you're deploying the right branch. Okay. And last, what I want to do is show you how to use a Go function on Netlify. The reason I want to show you this one just because like this was actually really hard to figure out. Like in a sense that like the documentation was a little confusing, and a lot of tutorials were outdated. So you kind of had to like hodgepodge how to figure it out. I ended up learning a lot in the process, which was pretty cool. So let's try that. Okay, so we're gonna try to make a new folder called, nope, not in there. So we're gonna be done with the JavaScript one now. So we've done JavaScript on Vercel and Netlify. So now what we're going to do is we're gonna let me make the folder in the right place. Okay, we'll call it Go Functions. And essentially what we want to do here is very similar to what we did with JavaScript functions. So we want to create a new folder, except now we're going to have a folder called Go Source. That's where we're going to put our source code for the Go functions. Because again, it's not going to use the Go source as the function. Go is a compiled language, so it has to compile the source, and it will compile it into what will be our functions folder. And we'll set that all up. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder, again, called public. That's where we'll put our HTML stuff. And I'll just literally copy the HTML file from here. Copy. Again, doesn't really matter. I mean, I could just not do that. That'd be fine too. Okay. And then actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the pre-made Netlify toml that I did from the last time I did this Go, because there's a few little tweaks. Okay, so same thing, netlify.toml. Everything's the same. Now the only difference is that I am going to use the command property, and we're going to use make. Okay, which means we are going to end up making a make file. If you've never used a make file before, this is same. It was same for me doing this, and I learned about make files, and make files are actually really cool. So we'll learn about that as we go through this. And basically what you're going to do is that it's going to upload to Netlify. This make build command is going to handle all the compilation of your Go binaries, and then put them in the designated folder, which we'll call, in this case, we'll just call it functions again to keep it consistent. Okay, functions. Otherwise, everything's, this is the other thing. You want to make sure that this is going to match the name of your eventual repo, the Go import path. So let me head over to Bitbucket and make another repo. Okay, we'll, reference, fine. We'll call this Go functions. Go Netlify functions, create repository. Okay, here's my repository. copy that. Copy. Okay. There we go. That's fine. And then again, we don't even really need the headers, because again, that has to be done in the function. Cool. So now in our Go source, we're going to write a function. Okay, so new file. We'll call this first again. New folder, first. And then we're going to open up this folder in the integrated terminal. I'm going to create a file in there called touchmain.go. And I'm going to copy over the boilerplate for a Go function. You can find this actually in the Netlify documentation. The boilerplate they have works just fine. So I'm going to copy over the one I have from a previous function, because it's just an easier starting place. And I'll walk you through it. Copy index Netlify main.go. I'll just close all this for now. I want to edit this one. Okay. And essentially the main thing is you have to kind of import at least these two libraries. Actually, I need to import all three. Let me see here. Yeah, you need these three. This is just basically Lambda stuff, so that way it knows how to do all the Lambda code is in there. NetHTTP. And the thing is that we have to first make sure that these libraries are set up. So now that we have this file in there, what we're going to do is we're going to run the command called go, I think it's go mod init, and then we're going to copy that same name as we did for the Go path. Oops, cancel. Oh, my bad. Forgot that I pasted something else. So let me go grab this right here. Copy. And then I'm going to head over to, where am I at? Right here, the main.go. Actually, I want to do it right here in the folder. So it's like go mod init paste. And this is going to create a file. See, this creates the go mod file. This is like your package.json for like JavaScript. And then what we want to do is we want to have Go look at this file and get these libraries and add them to our Go mod. So you can just type in go get, because it'll just take a look at the Go files in that folder, and then just kind of add everything to the Go mod. So go get, and see, it just kind of figures it out. It sees that these imports are in there, and then just adds them to our Go mod. Okay, so here's our AWS Lambda, because again, the two things we imported are sub libraries of that, and the HTTP library is part of the standard Go library. So that's that. Okay, let's go back and take a look at the function. So we import the libraries. Here's the function. Okay. And the function basically takes in the request. This is the request object. Okay, with all the fun request stuff. This is the event object. I think this might be this is the return value. Okay. Because again, basically you type the return value. So this is the parameters. This is the return value, which is a response object or an error if the API errors. And then basically we return that type of object. So here we're returning a response object. Go can be a little terse sometimes to read, but it's just basically they won't call them objects in Go. They're called, it's essentially an object, a struct, technically. So we're returning a proxy response struct, which has certain properties, status code, headers. So headers is just a map. So again, here's where I would add those CORS headers. I'm just going to go back and edit this here. So once again, you have to add the headers in the function if you want to deal with CORS issues. Okay, and here's the body. The body has to be text. Okay, so essentially, like if I want to send JSON over, so let's, for example, let's see here, before the return value, let's try this. Let's create var. Actually, I don't even need to do that. We'll just call it my res for response. And then we're going to use the implied typing operator. This just says, okay, we're going to figure out what the type is based on what you assign to it. And we're going to create a map where the keys are strings and the values are strings. Okay, and then we're going to give that map a value and say hello world. Okay, and now it's complaining because I haven't used this. Okay, I'm going to import another library. This is part of the standard library, so it's encoding /JSON. Okay, and basically what I want to do is I'm going to want to encode that map as JSON. So it's going to be like JSON dot Marshall. This turns it into a JSON object. So I'm going to Marshall res. But that, see, it's going to complain because this is the result of this function is not a string, and it needs a string. And a string will call, oh, that's, yep, there's something else I'm going to have to do first. Control X or cut. Here's what I'm going to do first, because Marshall in Go, sometimes things return multiple values, so you have to kind of do them separately. So I'm going to say, I'm going to call this result, caps locks, result, comma, underscore. So basically, the result of JSON.Marshall will be assigned to this first function, but if the function errors, this underscore will receive it, kind of as a throwaway function. So then I put this here. Okay, so now we have result. That's a JSON object, which still doesn't quite help me. So I need to do string and then pass result in there, and that's going to turn it into a string. Oh, but doesn't like it for some reason. Undefined. Oh, what did I call it? Result. Result. We did define it right up here. Result. What is it like? Not like this. Undefined result. Go. Oh, because I didn't use the little colon here. That's why. Because if not, then I have to use like the word var and type it and all that stuff. Okay. And now it's happy. So essentially, again, I can create my object. So whether it's a struct, the map, whatever type of thing you want to turn into JSON, you create that data. That data then gets marshaled into a JSON object, and that JSON object that gets turned into a string, and then that's how you pass it into the body. And then you probably want to change the content type to application JSON, so it gets treated as JSON. And then that's essentially the deal. Okay. And then basically what happens is that this is the handler, and this function kicks the handler. So this is the function that runs when the binary is run, but just kickstarts the function we defined up here. And that's essentially the process of this function. A little bit more complicated than doing it in JavaScript. So again, the reason you would do this is because you need something to be done that needs speed, and JavaScript's just you did it in JavaScript and it was running a little slow, and you're trying to make it pick up more speed. Go is going to help you do that with having the precompiled binaries. Okay, so that's all set. Now I'm going to copy the make file from my other Go attempt, and let's just walk through this. So in this case, we want to make a folder called functions, because that's going to be the folder we want to serve. Okay, these settings here are based on Netlify's architecture. So this will help you make it work on Netlify. It just sets these environmental variables that Netlify will use to kind of determine sort of what you're building. And then this will just literally go run that go get command for any functions you have. So literally you would just, any functions you have in your Go source, it'll go get those libraries. And so if we want to actually make this functions, because we're using functions, and then install will then do the build and all that stuff. Okay. And that's what all a make file is. It's just a file that has keys and then a chain of commands. So I could literally just you can literally automate any kind of commands. I can just do like cheese and say, hey, cheese is going to touch a file called hello.txt, and then it's going to touch a file called cheese.txt, and then it's going to cat or echo Gouda, and then insert that text into the cheese.txt file. You can just do any commands, and then what you do is you just run the command make, then the command. So even though I have this here, when we go back to our netlify.toml, see our command is make build. Okay, so it's going to first run the make file, specifically this build command, and then after it runs that, well, that's it. If we were doing React, then this would be like make build and npm run build or something. Okay, so that should be it. Okay, because essentially now we will upload the Netlify. It'll run the build command. The build command should build into the functions, or build our source into the functions folder, and then it'll be available to run. The only thing I'm going to want to add, new file, is a git ignore, because I want to git ignore the functions folder, so that way it gets rebuilt on every deploy. Because again, it's compiled. So I slash functions. Okay. Save. And now we'll just do let me open up Integrate Terminal. And just so we can test it out, we always want to just test it out, so I just run make build, just to make sure that it actually builds the functions. So it does the thing, and hey, there's the functions folder, and inside it, there's the binary. Okay, so it works. Nice. So next thing I want to do is just do a git init, git commit -m, first commit. Okay. Oh, I need to put a closing quotation. Oh, git add dot git commit dash first commit. Why you not like that? Oh, I forgot the M. -m. There we go. Okay, so then here is the repo. Copy the URL. Then I'm going to do git remote add the URL. Oh, wait, I didn't like that. Oh, I forgot to give it a name. Git remote add origin. You can tell I just woke up. Okay. And then git push origin main. Put in the password. Okay, let's head back to Netlify. I'll come back and delete that afterwards. Okay, new function, Bitbucket. This time I want the, oh, actually, it's right there. Okay, we want to deploy the main branch. And that should be it. So that's that. That's going to deploy. Let's just take a look at the deployment logs. Wait, training to build, starting to prepare. Functions path, different functions path detected. Going to use one specified Netlify. That's fine, that's fine, that's fine. Functions, build command, make build, good. Yep, found the function. There we go. So then let's go to deploys. Let's go to functions. There's first. Let's see the URL. Copy. And let's go to another tab. It works. See? Hello world. Okay, because again, that was, if we go back to our code here, we made this object. We turned it to JSON and then turned that JSON into a string. And then there we go. So that's how you do it. That's how you do serverless functions in JavaScript and Go using Vercel and Netlify. My name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. If you enjoyed this video, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, head over to devnursery.com and sign up for the Slack and Discord communities. I'll see you guys on the next one.